Yeah, welcome once again to another episode of Zooming into Radio with Pastor. I always invite Ike Samba Mustard. We talk about issues as they say doing, and perhaps, we'll just dabble into their private lives, but that's not what this show is all about. We're all about radio. So my guest today is none other than David Mashabela. We know him from Radio 2000. You do the Royal Playground, right?
Yeah, that's what I call it.
Yeah. And
That's what I
if you're
call it.
riding this King David thing, everything has to do with the king.
And
Taking a few notes from the Bible.
I must tell you, it's not easy though, because having to always come up with something related to royalty, you end up with fewer and fewer things to take from, so it's not easy. But yeah, I'm writing it as much as I can.
Yeah. David Mashabela, not a lot of people know much about you. You're never in the media, eh?
Yeah,
you're a private person.
Yeah, it's easier to live that kind of life. I'm not all over the place. I don't do too much. I live my, the phrase young people say, they like to say, stay in your lane. So I do very well in staying in my lane. That's my thing.
Yeah, but there's very few people who have this background. My first experience of you, I don't know whether you did radio before that, but what they call a blog nowadays, you did that for a city press years before you went to Metro. And as Eli, who was so fascinated by radio, who was fresh on radio at the time, I think I was only 2 years into radio. I read that article religiously every Sunday.
Wow, that warms my heart, man. That warms my heart. Thank you.
There's so much that I learned from it, and I think it took so much of your time. How did you do it?
Interesting. You asked that. I used to work for an ad agency at the time, and the advantage with advertising agencies then, I don't know now.
Yeah.
We had the media department was almost like a research department. So they would collect a lot of data that's related to different media platforms, whether it's radio or TV or magazines at the time or newspapers. So there was, if you remember those articles well, they were based a lot on research and statistics and things like that. And then I would have my opinion based on the numbers. And that's really what I was doing then. I had access to a lot of data at the advertising agency. And then I would throw in my own opinion. But I will tell you this though, I used to consume a hell of a lot of radio at that time. I used to listen to so much radio all the time. I used to listen to Nogo, you name it, all African language stations and the Joburg stations. Because the advantage also with Joburg is you have so many stations here. So I would listen to them. But the beauty about it is it made it sound like I listened to radio all the time. But my article was only, maybe 200 words. That's not a lot to cram into an article. And it gives the impression that you listen to everyone, but I wasn't listening to everyone. I was listening to as much as I could.
How did that gig come about? Or did you approach the newspaper and say, I want to do something of this nature? Because no one has ever done it before. I don't remember anyone in South Africa. And I don't remember anyone even doing it after you did it.
I remember I loved radio for a very long time. From when I was still at university, that's when I fell in love with radio much earlier than that. But when I got to varsity, I actively wanted to be on radio, but I couldn't. I eventually ended up being on community radio. And then I passed my degree, went back home, struggled to get that gig, and gave up on it. Eventually, I joined an advertising agency. The thing about ad agencies is we record a lot of radio ads. And we had a radio session we were recording with Bondo Ntuli, who's, I don't know if he's still on Kaya. He was on Kaya very recently.
I remember him,
Exactly. So Bondo was one of the voices. We're doing an ad for BET, if I remember well. And we were doing something about jazz, and we invited him to be the voice. And while he was there, I started telling him about how I wish I was on radio. He said, well, you work in an ad agency. Why? And you write. Why don't you write about it? And I decided maybe that's not a bad idea. So I wrote a blog, and I'm glad you call it that because that's what it was.
Yeah.
I wrote a blog. I sent it to what is the station? I sent it to City Press. They read it.
Yeah.
Vukile Pokwane was the editor at the time. He read it, he liked it, and he said to me, how many of these can you do? I said, I can do one every week. He said, we're going to give you 3 months, try you out and see if you can sustain it. And that's really what happened. I wrote for 3 months. After 3 months, he said, well, you will write again for another 3 years. So I wrote literally for 3 years after that. I wrote that article for a long, long time.
But your struggle to get into radio, did the article open doors for you?
It opened a lot of meetings, but not, and those meetings were not radio meetings. They were PR meetings, radio stations wanting to justify what they were doing, wanting to justify the decision why they hired so and so. So those were the meetings that I got. Nothing more than nothing special. But I got a meeting with Romeo, and that took a while. Eventually, I got a meeting with Romeo. I had written about radio in that past weekend. I had written about Metro, and he called me. He wanted to comment and justify whatever it is that he wanted to justify, and he said, "Let's meet for coffee." So we met for coffee, and that introduced me to him. And that's pretty much where the ball started rolling. That led to me eventually joining Metro. It started with that. So answering that question directly, did it open doors? Not very immediately, but it opened the door that I wanted.
I think let's go back to what you said. You've always wanted to be on radio. Now you got an opportunity. Did they offer you to produce, or did they offer you a show of your own?
No, they offered me. The question, interesting, from Romeo was, I like your articles. I like your insight on radio. What can you contribute to Metro? That was the question. And because I wanted to be on air, I said, I want to be a DJ. He said, no, man, that's for famous people. It's for people who are already on radio. It's for people who are already great on radio. So you are just another guy. So what else do you want to do besides being on radio? I said, anything. I don't know. What opportunities do you have? Can you be a producer? I said, I don't know what producers do. But I'm sure I can learn. And he said, okay, cool. Let's try you on either Afternoon Drive or Breakfast. At the time, Afternoon Drive was presented by Glenn, and Breakfast, they were going to move Ice to Breakfast. It was done by T-Bows, and they were going to move Ice to Breakfast. And he said, which one of the two would you be willing to do? I said to him, I already know Ice very well because we met at Varsity. So I'm more than happy to move to work with just Ice than to work with Glenn. I don't know Glenn. We're going to start from zero, and that's really what happened. That's the opportunity to work with Ice really started there with me choosing morning show over Afternoon Drive. That's what happened.
So you say you knew Ice from university days, and I think it's important for chemistry. That's what you had in mind, right? How important is it, not necessarily to be friends with your team members, but rather how they think, their personalities, whether you complement each other or you don't, because you get into with a radio, when you get a gig, you meet this total stranger and you told, make it work, make it sound good. What's your opinion on that? Do co-presenters or team members really have to be friends outside of the studio?
They don't necessarily have to be friends, but they have to get along, and they have to know each other's way of doing things on air. And that will take you far if you think about it. And you guys do it really well. Where there's a radio chemistry. You don't have to have a chemistry outside that. But you have to have a radio chemistry. And a radio chemistry, once you click, you know what they're about to do or what they're about to say and how they're about to say it. And then you're almost 2 steps ahead of their comment in terms of what they're doing. And in that way, it makes for magic on air, where the connection is so seamless. Every time you do something, it sounds like you rehearsed it. and you didn't. You just been doing it for so long that it sounds like it's rehearsed. That's really what it is.
That's you know each other's next steps.
That's it.
But I guess with us, it's helped us that, I mean, you're with the guys, besides working with them for the last 11 years, we've worked before. We've worked together before. I remember I was with True FM then. I had our newsreader, Umafa, doing news on my show. But with the coach who does the sport, they were on my show at different times. But once we came together on that show, it happened so easily, and it was like a reunion of some sort with us. Speaking about True FM, I remember 2 encounters with you. We were at was it Fish River Sun, and they had you in one of those team building exercises as a speaker. And I was there. I remember now. It was a second encounter. Your
That's a long time ago. That's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. So I was once a student in a way.
Yes.
Yeah. But your radio training, and how important is radio training? Because I look at guys who are, it's very rare that you get stations now nationally recruiting guys from community radio stations. I guess there's a lot of campus guys on radio, but then when it comes to training, how important is training or the lack thereof at the level of community radio stations? Because eventually they have to be the feeders, or the plan was to have the community radio stations as feeders to these commercial stations or national stations, and I don't see that happening at a rate that I'd like.
Look, the answer, I can give you 10 different versions of this answer, and I'll do my best to give one that brings everything together. Let's talk about feeders as community radio stations. Naturally, talent has to be sourced somewhere. That's just the way things are. But we don't have a endless number of radio shows, where those guys, Chabu, who's at some community radio station somewhere in Lusikisiki, will be guaranteed a show on your station, for instance. You don't have that because unlike soccer, where there's so many teams and so many possibilities, with radio, actually soccer is probably just as good an example, because you only have 11 players on the field at a particular time. And if you're a team that has a lot of money, you can have another 11 that's waiting to go. Radio, there you go, good example. But radio, it doesn't have the B team. It doesn't have a training camp. It doesn't have all those development guys. So for community to feed, there must be spaces for them to feed into. There must be shows for them to feed into. Already there's a problem there where Mashabela has been on air at 2000 for 10 years. Can't look to Hambani, not just Nigi chance. And that becomes a debate all on its own. Let's pause that for a second and go back and talk about training, because you can't just feed if you're not good enough. Radio, first and foremost, is a bit of a talent. And I like using soccer again, because you're born with something that others don't have, and you have a little bit more of it, whatever that thing is. I'll be honest with you, I can't always define it. Half the time I don't know what it is, but you can hear it when you hear it, that, wow, man, this guy sounds good. There's something about them that sounds nice. So that's talent that you can't train. You can't train that. You already have it. And when you walk in, what we do beyond that is now training. Training sharpens that, it perfects that, it makes that nicer, it makes that even better. And that's why, going back to soccer and sports, even if you are the greatest player in the world, Ronaldo or Messi, depending on which camp you're on, you still need to go to practice. You still need to perfect your penalty kick. You still need to perfect your dribbling skills. And that's where training comes in. Because radio, when you're watching a Ronaldo play, he makes it look so easy. Like radio, it makes it look so easy. Anybody think they can do it. And that's the trend that we always find ourselves in with the radio game, where a lot of people think, I can pull this off, man. If this guy can do it. And some of us, and me in particular, I do easy conversational radio. Anybody thinks they can do what I do. And they probably can, because I don't think it's that difficult. I talk easy. I speak in the language of people who are listening to me. I bring, and I don't want to say I'm higher, but I make sure that I can speak to a professor the same way I will speak to a guy who's just a everyday chap. You know what I mean? And that is what people think they can do. They think everybody think they can do that, but it's not. It's a skill that comes with time, that you perfect with time. So training is very important.
On that same note, how you speak to your listeners, how do you master the fact that when you look at the LSMs, when you look at your listenership, you range from, for instance, with us, I think we go as low as LSM2. Up as high as LSM9. And a lot of people find it very surprising that you get people that high up in this hierarchy who listen to a isiXhosa medium station. And they fail to understand. When you look at their professional qualifications, academic achievements and qualifications, and you find that, no, man, you find professionals, people with 2 or 3 degrees, but who listen to this radio station. How do you tailor make your content so that it cuts across from the person at the lowest of the table right to the top? Because whether it's male or female, you seem to please everybody. We out here, we see. How do you manage that balance?
Human beings, irrespective of how much money they have or how much education they have, ultimately they have the same issues to deal with. We want to live a better life, and we're exactly the same. We want our kids to live a better life. We have fears of crime. We have uncertainty about the economy. We have uncertainty about our jobs. We have relatives that have the same uncertainties. We want to be loved. We want to love. You know that we enjoy a guy who enjoys a Luther Vandross song. Whether unemali or anamali, they all connect in that spot, that tiny little gap they connect in that. So you find that all of us as humans, we tend to share a lot of commonalities. We make the mistake of putting people in groups, LSM groups, for example. We are the ones who make that mistake. But people may have, and there's a friend, and I'm going to use a crude example. There's a friend of mine who always says, a vagina doesn't have LSM. That's why Uchanda Bafazi, this guy. So I tell now LSM, we are fine. So it's that type of thing. There's a lot of us, there's a lot that's similar about us, that not different. And we make the mistake of differentiating people based on
according to class.
According to class. That's the mistake we make. And education. And that's the mistake we make. And the ability to speak to everyone is an amazing ability. A former president of our country, Jacob Zuma, masters that. He's great at that, and connecting with everybody. And that's the thing, that once you master it, it's easy to do. But you have to know that everyone is the same. There's no difference in a lot of things about us. I like that even when people talk about race, they say there's more about us that's common between whites and blacks and different races than the race that's different. It's just the pigmentation, it's the color of our skin, but everything else is almost exactly identical. So that's really what it is. That's why I'm able to do it so easily.
Still on that same subject of content, social media plays a huge role, and a lot of people seem to over rely on it, and I guess it depends on what the station or the show is about. But what's your opinion on relying very much on social media for content?
Look, you can't ignore it because very often it's the narrative of the country, but you can't rely on it, that's for sure, because it doesn't reflect 100% of the state of mind of our society. A lot of people will agree with me that Julius Malema probably wins elections on Twitter. But in reality, he doesn't. You know what I mean? On Twitter, he's president of the country. But in reality, he's not. Because you can't rely on it. Because Twitter is such a small community of people who have limitless data, who are able to log in anytime and watch Twitter feeds. But it doesn't reflect the true reality of South Africa. An average South African doesn't have money for data. The average South African has access to internet once in a while, not all the time. That's just the average South African. So South African digital divide is so wide that Unabantu who haven't seen an internet page in South Africa today, they have never seen it. They don't know how it looks like. And there are people who only see it once a week or twice a week or for 10 minutes a day, or so there's a lot of that. But we tend to exist in this bubble that assumes that there's more people on Twitter than those that are not on Twitter, and that's a very wrong way of seeing our country. So you can't rely on it, but you can't ignore it. You can't ignore it for a lot of reasons. One, it tells you what's going on. Two, it has a lot of great content. Social media, you'll find something that will spark an idea. And then you can use that idea on your show as well. So there's a lot of those opportunities on social media. I don't rely on it. I sometimes deliberately ignore it. I don't have social media on my phone. Here's my phone. If you look at it, I don't have social media. I don't want to have immediate access to it. I have it on an iPad, and that iPad is in my bag that I use when I go to SABC. So I don't want to see it all the time. That's really my attitude with social media. I want to see it when I want to see it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're in control there, unlike many of us.
No, I don't want it.
With your conversations and topics, do you have no-go zones where you say, I do not talk about this on air? Politics, for instance. Politics has given us so much content over the last 2-3 years. I mean, with the President Ramaphosa, even with the drama, him coming into office, Jacob Zuma, and everything else. There's the Zondo Commission. And you guys were smart enough to actually bring in a political analyst to do the dirty work for you.
That's what we do. That's what I do.
Yeah. Playing it safe all the time.
Yeah. Look, I'll tell you. But go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I was going to say, do you have any topics that are no-go zones for you? Politics, religion?
Religion is a no-go zone for me.
Why? You're not well versed in that department.
No. I think 99% of us are not well versed. We think we are, because it's such a dynamic space that you can never claim mastery. Because even if you master Christianity in your own corner as umfundisi, but you find that you have no knowledge of the Quran and everything that comes with it, or you have no knowledge of other of Buddhism, for example. So that means your knowledge is already limited, and yet you claim mastery of that. You walk about thinking that you're the man, but to be fair, your knowledge is quite limited. It doesn't inculcate everything about religion. So the reason why it's a no-go area for me is because it is so personal, and people, when it comes to religion, they are emotional. They are deeply emotional. I was once called a non-believer by a guy I was arguing with about Christianity, and that same night I saw that guy at a strip club. So you see how this thing works. He called me a non-believer. He called me a heathen because I was arguing about something. And then that same night, he was doing something that he preaches he doesn't do. So that's why I don't play in that space, because abantu mabazonda, they hate you really deep when it comes to religion. But they can excuse you when it comes to soccer if you don't support their team. They can excuse you when it comes to politics if you don't support their team. But when it comes to religion, so I don't play in that space. Absolutely. And on politics, on the other hand, I don't clarify my opinion. I throw it out there and leave it. That's what I do on the radio. I don't say, but this guy is wrong. It's not my place. It's not my place. I broadcast to a wide audience. Why do I want to alienate my own audience? So I call a political analyst. They give their opinion, and I say, thank you.
Thank you.
I play a song and I move on. That's how I approach it. I do a little bit like you, where you don't take strong positions.
Yeah, always be on the fence. But you have to show all sides or both sides to whatever you're talking about, as long as you are on the fence. But you try by all means to open their minds to what other ideas are, other possibilities are out there.
For example, yesterday, when the president was charged, or 2 days ago, whenever it was, I said, I started talking about the arms of government, the legislature, executive, and judiciary. I gave a description of that and upholding a rule of law. I spoke about that, and I spoke about how contempt of court is an illegal act that is punishable. I described all of that, and then said, if you do something that's wrong in law, you have to be punished. That's just life. That's how it works. And nobody can get away with it. And that's just the way it is. If it was you, you would have the same problem if you were found wrong in law. And I left it there. Already there were comments that said, but David, you're taking a side. I said, I didn't take a side. I just told you about the nature of things.
That's what the law says. That's how it works. Yeah.
That's it.
Talking about playing it safe, I remember I saw a podcast. I think it was one of these young chaps, McG, and it was with Chili M, and they were talking about the state of radio currently. And Chili M said something. He said radio is dead because a lot of people you find on the radio nowadays play safe. And I'm thinking, I never got into radio to be fired. Hell, I've got children. I've got a wife to provide for. I'm okay, as safe as I am. I really don't have to. I really don't have to. But what's your opinion on that?
I wish I was brave enough. I wish I was brave enough to do that type of radio. But I was raised differently, you know.
Yeah.
I was raised to respect. I was raised because you have to be brave enough to know that you're about to disrespect someone or some sector of society. You have to be brave enough to know that, and you have to say, I'm about to break this rule and I'm fine with it. I can't do that. I can't do that naturally. I can't do that easily.
Because you're not that kind of person, even and that's not how you brought up.
That's it. And McG records his shows from my studio. So I consume a lot of what McG does, even now, even today. Literally, when we were talking earlier, McG was in the studio in my very office where I'm at. I see him a lot and I talk to him a lot. And I always tell him that what he does, I can only envy it because I can't do it. And I can't find that character inside of me that can do it comfortably and easily. I just can't. That's just how my life is. So I always look at the guys like Chili M and all the rest of them. Gareth Cliff was a lot like that as well. And I always say, man, I wish I could do that. But there's room for easygoing, pleasant guys who just play your favorite song and go home. So there's room for us as well.
Yes. You know, talking about your show, 12 to 3 is my busiest time. I mean, that's where I get most of what I have to do done. With you, working 12 to 3, do you even have a life? I mean, you're in the office right now and it's 5:45. When do you manage to do other things that adults do?
I find, and I will say this very carefully so I don't lose my job in the long run, I find 12 to 3 extremely inconvenient.
Exactly.
Because you are in the morning, you're rushing to it. So that means you're already, when you wake up in the morning, you're preoccupied with the show already. And then when you're done with it, the half the day is gone. So you're left with a few more hours of normal waking hours. So
and everyone else is already on their way back home.
They're wrapping up. So it's an extreme inconvenience, that time slot. But I had to adapt to it. I remember when I was moved to this time slot, immediately I asked if I could be moved back to what I used to do, which was 9 to 12. And I was told, no, we have a strategy. You know, they will tell you about strategy. And then I had to accept it for what it is. It hasn't been easy. I had to adapt to it, and now I work around it now. And with COVID-19 came this virtual life. I've had maybe 4 meetings while I was on air, you know, because now you can do these Zoom calls and all of that. So it has kind of worked for me over the months. But when I started, I was grumpy as hell. I hated that time slot. I've had to adapt. I've had to do it with ease now. Now I'm kind of fine, but also I've sacrificed a lot in my life. I don't have much of a life. I'm in the office 99% of the time, and that's just how I've designed my life over the years, and that's it, really.
With all the inconvenience, I'm sure you can do without the radio gig, because you're busy on the side. You're busy on the side. You've got a couple of things going for you, but you choose to inconvenience yourself.
Interesting. You say I can do without it. I would struggle without it, and I'll tell you why I say that. Yeah. I know for sure, deep down in my heart, I don't do radio for money. I know that for a fact. I could live normally without the money that I get from SABC, exactly because I do many other things. But I need it because it helps me to be me again. You know, it always reminds me of me doing radio, and I have a chance to do that every day, where I'm not this boss who's grumpy half the time, who's not happy with his employees, who's impatient. Radio reminds me of my humility, because I speak to people, and I have a job, and that for me that job is big. I have to make people feel better about their day. That's a big job, and I have to do that every day. So doing radio humbles me extremely. It makes me be easy again, and I like that. I like going to it, because even if I'm having a bad morning, once I switch on the mic and I hear music in the headphones, my state of mind
all goes away.
All goes away. That's what radio does for me. So your question is, I can possibly live without it. I would have a hard time living without radio. That much I'll tell you.
Yeah. Talking about being a boss, what is it that management doesn't get about on-air talent? They still are doing it the wrong way.
Because most managers who manage radio have never done radio.
Yeah.
They've never spent more than 2 minutes in a radio studio, most of them. And when they come, they are probably bringing a guest to come and show off a studio, but they've never put headphones on and be stone cold with an audience that's at home or in their cars. And you're doing this imaginary thing in your head where you're picturing your audience and what they're doing. And yet you're trying to connect with them emotionally. Most people who run radio stations or even program radio stations have just never done it. They've never done a radio show. They don't get that you can actually get exhausted from doing it every day. They don't get all those small things where it's not easy to sound bubbly and happy and excited every single time. They don't get that because they've never had to do it before. And there's an assumption that radio DJs get a lot of money and that they do a 3-hour show and they play music.
There's no such.
So there's a lot of that type of stuff. But really, a lot of managers have never done radio. And unlike in soccer, a lot of soccer managers and soccer coaches have played soccer. They know the challenges that soccer players have. They know the fame that comes with being a soccer player. They know Upiso Msimane, he played soccer for a long time. He knows the dynamics of being a player. You can't lie to him as a player. So it's exactly that we go through. So managers don't know half the time what they're talking about.
Do people who have been on radio make good managers?
It depends if they have the management side of their brain as well, because it's not all of us that have it. The ability to manage people is not automatic to all of us. Some people are really, really good at it, and some people do it so shamefully bad. It's appalling. So it's not automatic. Because managing people takes skill, and then managing famous people takes an even higher skill. Managing egos, managing managing you. You think you're the man. You think you're this top DJ, and this guy has to manage you. Very few people. I can mention maybe less than 4 managers that I've either encountered or worked with that did it easily over the years.
Yeah. What's your opinion on the direction radio is taking? I mean, the numbers, we've been losing numbers on radio, and a lot of people will bring in other things that have become an impediment, not an impediment as such, but rather a distraction to radio. I mean, people have always had their CDs. They could always play their CDs in the car. When you're talking crap and there's no other station to listen to, they always have the choice of just switching it off. But now, listeners now have so many options. One of those being podcasts. And with the relationship that you have with guys like Mick G, as they're using your studios, do you feel that radio is slowly dying?
No.
While all these other things emerge.
Not for a long time. Radio won't be dying for a long time. The world over, not only in South Africa, but if you were to zoom in and come specifically to South Africa, not everybody has access to internet. So radio remains the most important source of everyday information. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And then it becomes the most important source of everyday entertainment as well for a lot of people. And then when you tune in, you find Pastor the DJ who's exciting, and this guy is fun and makes my day feel better. You don't find that on a podcast. Where radio is starting to struggle a little bit is what we call catch up on TV, where you can listen to whatever you want, whenever you want.
Wherever.
Exactly. So that's where radio tends to struggle, because it's a live medium. What happened, it's gone. So as a result, radio tends to suffer from that. However, it can suffer from it if what we do every day, what you did this morning on your show, what I did just now, a few hours ago on my show, is radio content. Immediately after I do it, we cut it and we put it on our website. People can access it anytime they want. It's a very podcast that they want to listen to. So radio now evolves with all other mediums. It's been able to do that so seamlessly, radio, where the show that I did today is a podcast literally immediately after I've just done it. If somebody was listening to the show and there's a song they enjoyed, they can go back to the show that I was listening to today and go listen to it again. If there's an interview that I did and they liked it, or they want to criticize it, or they want to listen to it again, they can go back to it and listen to it again. That's where radio has to go naturally. We don't do that as good as we're supposed to. There are other stations who are doing it, but SABC is not moving as fast as it's supposed to in those spaces. You know as well as I do that we record all shows. SABC has a show that I did with Just Eyes at Metro FM in 2001. SABC still has that recording.
Yeah,
they can convert.
Is that the one about the deportation and the arrest?
There you go. That show is still there.
That was a highlight. That was a highlight.
Of course it was. And many other shows like that. They can take those shows, put them as podcasts that are available anytime for people to listen to whenever they want to. So I don't think things like podcasts, social media will ever kill radio. If anything, they will enhance radio. You know as well as I do already, you've been in trouble once before on social media. So you know exactly what I'm talking about, that radio, you're a radio guy, but you got in trouble for social media. So the two, it means you live in those both worlds.
Yeah, they are connected some way, somehow.
That's it. We can do the same. We just don't take advantage of this as much as we should. And we can do that.
What do you listen to? You did say that you used to consume a lot of radio way back then. I'm sure you, and one other thing, and it irritates my wife. In fact, she's come to the point where she enjoys it, where you listen to radio and you always listen to it with a critical ear. Now, with my audience, as we're sitting in the car, as we're listening, and I'm always like, shouldn't have done this so, shouldn't have done this way, should have done it this way. And eventually she caught up with it, and now she can tell that, nah, this was not done right. This is how, so she's caught up. Even she started doing radio late last year as well because of the tips and how interesting she found me analyzing radio.
Yes.
So you obviously listen to radio differently. Definitely a radio broadcaster should be the hardest person to please.
Yeah.
What do you listen to? What kind of shows do you enjoy? We're not talking music now. We're talking radio. What kind of radio do you enjoy? If you can coin in a couple of names, feel free to do so.
I am a fan of talk format radio. I absolutely love talk radio. I look forward to it. I can't wait to hear it. So I enjoy discussions on radio. I enjoy debates on radio. I enjoy insight on radio. I enjoy listening to people who know more than I do on many different subjects. And there's thousands and hundreds of millions of those people. So I enjoy top format radio. I'm not a huge fan of music radio. I'm glad people listen to me, but I don't particularly care for music radio because I can listen to my own music if I want to. That's my argument why I'm not a fan of music format radio. Yet I listen to a lot of music because of the type of radio that I do. I listen to a hell of a lot of music. I consume music more than the average person because I'm forever listening to music that I can impress my listeners with. So that's really why I listen to so much music. And who do I listen to? I listen to Power FM lately. They've changed their lineup slightly. And I get a chance to listen to the afternoon drive when I'm in the office. So I listen to that. I listen to Money Talk on 702 quite a lot. I listen to Glenn Lewis when I'm driving from the office, from SABC to the office. I listen to Glenn. I listen to Ntombigaise, who's on 2000, on my way from
on your way to work.
Yes, I listen to those two shows. I don't listen to a lot of breakfast radio. I watch a lot of news on TV in the morning, actually. So I don't listen to a lot of breakfast format. But I would get a sense of what's going on. I'm the most impatient listener you'll ever get. Let me tell you that.
Yeah.
I'm horrible. When I'm driving, I change my dial literally 100 times. I get impatient with ads. When it's a horrible ad, I change the dial. When it's a bad listener that called in, I change the dial. So when the DJ is asking a question and they go long-winded in the way they answer, they're asking the question, I change the dial. When a DJ back announces a song and I can tell they're not connecting with the music, I change the dial. I change the dial 100 times when I drive. You can't drive with me too. You can't be with me in the car when I'm listening to radio. You'll get irritated because I change it so many times.
Same here.
I'm horrible with radio. And I cannot sleep listening to radio because I'm listening with a critical ear, as you said. So that means I'm twice more conscious because I'm listening to what this guy is going to do. How is he going to back announce that song? How is he going to throw forward to what he's about to do? So I listen with a critical eye. And when you're criticizing something, you can't rest your mind to a point where you're able to sleep. So I can't listen to radio when I'm sleeping. I'm incapable of that.
Let's talk about that. Links. You always seem to find a way of coming out with something very unexpected. It might be about what the song contains, or it might be something totally different, but it connects to this. How do you do that? I mean, I'm one of those people who still write their links. I'm one of those people, well, about 10, 12 years ago, I used to have a writing pad where I used to write my notes right through the day. And most listeners think that we only work for 2-3 hours a day. But it's actually for longer hours because you come across content all the time. And it's how you translate that content so that you make it interesting to the listener. So those links, I always prepare those things. With the music that I'm playing, you sort of like play around with it every now and again. That's the element of surprise. That's the element of surprise, and it engages a lot of people. And I guess critics like you, who are always listening to how is he going to do that? With you and your links, how much preparation goes into that? And with the meetings in between, virtually, while you're playing the music.
let me tell you, I prepare links all the time, exactly like you. I write a lot of stuff that I say on air. It doesn't always sound that way, but I do. I write a lot of keywords. I write a lot of phrases related to the song or to the music. There's a lot of research that goes, particularly when I back announce a song. I find, and this trick I learned from Just Eyes. You look for the unusual in the story related to the song. You look for something that not everybody would have picked up on about a particular artist or about a particular song. If you can't find it, it's okay. You'll find it next time. So I do that quite a bit. And because I prepare my own music on my show, I generally have a sense of the songs that I'm going to have tomorrow. And as a result, I have a sense of the back announces that I'm going to do. So if I know I have a song by Zucchero, I'm going to say something about Senza Nodona, I will throw in a story about the grandmother that is saying that is calling his name in the background at the end of the song, because it's something that I heard about years ago, and I put it as a note in my. So that's really what it is. But the idea is to try to find. I do old school radio when it comes to back announce. DJs were authorities on information for many years. They knew more than the average person. That's how they sounded. They always knew a story that you didn't know. They always knew something that, wow, man, that's interesting. They always knew about some form of research that some university did that you didn't know. And I spent a lot of time looking for that type of stuff. I spent a lot of time looking for those unusual corners where there are stories about something that you'll say in passing. And that's really how I prep. And I do that consciously all the time. And I'm very curious. I want to know people's life stories. I was in an Uber about 2 weeks ago with DJ Smooth, and the driver is from Venda. It's been in Joburg for about 2 years, and the Uber industry is not doing particularly well in South Africa. COVID has been bad, but there's so many taxis right now. So as a result, they're struggling. On that day, he had made 400 rands only, and it was already 5-6 in the afternoon. So I listen to. I'm curious about those stories because I know those stories are radio content ultimately. So I'm likely to start up a conversation with strangers everywhere I go, because all of those conversations are radio conversations for me.
And what I've learned was that over the years, the human element in what you say, everyone can always relate to what you say, as long as there's that truthfulness to it and that originality. I mean, if it comes from an Uber driver, so many people can relate to that. And not only other Uber drivers, but other people who own their own cars who never interact with Uber drivers. So you're telling them and you're giving them a totally new perspective on life, things that they never even knew that they might even come across. So they look at that Uber driver in a different way. So it's that human element to it that you put to your link.
Absolutely.
The direction that I don't know whether I can say your show or the station is taking, and you can never answer for the station, but rather for yourself. It sounds like a Sunday every day on your show.
Interesting.
Why is that?
Interesting you say that, because that's exactly the line that I use. I say we play Sunday music every day.
Every day.
And for me personally, it's because I know that Sunday music is the most popular form of music in South Africa, without a shadow of a doubt.
Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers on these stations on Sundays.
Absolutely. It's the most popular style of radio, of music. So why not duplicate it? Because before Grand Shakwan in 1986, there was no Sunday music. There was no Sunday radio. We used to play our own music, different music in our corners wherever we were. Grand Shakwan came up with Teddy Pendergrass, 10 of the Lights, and started playing those things when everybody else said, no, man, you can't do that. And he did it. And it worked. And it became the way we listen to radio. And I said, if we can have rice on Sunday, surely we can have it on Monday. And surely we can have it on Tuesday. And then we can keep having it. And it seems to be working. And people are gravitating towards it. And some will say, David Yapora, he plays the songs that we enjoy on Sunday, but there are more people that are liking it, that are enjoying it. So I have no reason not to do it. And that's really why, and it's not necessarily the direction of the station, it's my direction. And the station is allowing me to do it. And I can only say thank you for that. That's really where we're going. And nobody else is doing it. Nobody else is doing it. That's it.
And radio is all about being original. You know, being a copycat on radio, it's a killer factor for some people.
Absolutely.
You have to be yourself. And of course, until a lot of people start looking at the numbers, and maybe when they see this video and they understand the thinking behind the Sunday music every day, then you start hearing so many stations doing the same thing. And I think this is why radio has become so boring. Everyone is doing something that they see someone else doing. I mean, how many stations are playing Sunday music on a Sunday? All of a sudden, we've got Sunday, this Sunday, that all.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same sound every Sunday. We go to listen to it. It's the same sound.
How many years have you been on radio this year?
If you count community radio as well, probably 25 years, give or take.
25.
It's long. I know it sounds embarrassing. But that's what it is.
Gandhi, how old are you, David?
I'm turning 46 in 2 months.
What? With a few months, because I'm turning 46 in November. That's in 4-5 months' time.
I'm 2 months older than you. I'm 2 months older than you.
Just a few months. Just a few months. How many more years in you on radio? How long can you go for?
As long as I still have a radio gig, I will do it for as long as there is a gig for me. Radio, unlike soccer, radio, unlike sports, soccer and radio, you can do it even if you're an old man. You know, you can still do it well. Grand Japan was 72 when he was doing 72, 69, 70, somewhere there when he was doing Gagas. So he was doing Sunday radio, or not. It's not even Gagas. It's what station is that? I think it's Gagas actually. So you can do radio for as long as you still sound decent on air. You know, if your voice can carry you, you can do it.
Yeah. Does the same principle that applies to goalkeepers in soccer apply to radio? You get better with time. Like fine wine, the more years you have on radio, not necessarily the bigger your star is or the brighter it shines, but you're more wiser and you enjoy radio more, and people start enjoying what a real announcer is supposed to be. And that comes with experience. It comes with time.
Yeah. One thing that you master more than everything else is you get to be easier as a person, because you know who you are now. You know, you don't try to prove anything anymore. So that is by far, that's why old people are far wiser than we can ever be. We just get impatient with them, but they are much smarter than we can ever be. So when you've been on radio long, you are calmer, you are easier. You've seen it all, man. There's nothing else that phases you anymore. But remember, radio at its core is about the ability to connect with your audience. And the older you are, the easier it is to do that. You know, the easier it is you find to connect with people, because you're fine now. You know, you're pretty much aware of the type of person you are. You're aware of the things you don't like and things you like, and it makes it easier for you to do radio in that way. That's really what it is. So you're right. You get better with time, but more than anything, your personality gets more refined with time.
Oh yes, experience. I've seen so many. I think this will be my last question. Looking at the time, so many of the old guys that we used to listen to growing up, I was shocked that people like Alex J are still on radio, Treasure Shabalala, and so many others. But some people might look at it like emotion when they go and join community stations, all these up and coming radio stations. And I see that as these are people that are doing what they love. And it doesn't matter where I am or how much I get paid, as long as I get that gratification, the one you spoke of earlier. It doesn't matter what your day might be like. Just put me behind a microphone and I'll be fine.
Yeah. Interesting. You say community radio is a demotion.
I was saying that a lot of people see it.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Well, you'll be glad to know that that station where you find those guys, particularly those guys who were on radio many years ago, on 5, on Metro, and all of that.
Yeah.
It is, give it 5 years, that station will be one of the biggest stations in Gauteng, and yet it's a community radio. They just got the classic FM frequency, which is a much bigger frequency in Joburg.
In Gauteng.
Exactly. They just got that frequency now, and they're a community radio station because their community is adult contemporary music community. Remember, radio communities are no longer defined by geographic area. They are defined by groups of people with a common interest. So as a result, they've come together, put together a community radio station. It's one of the biggest cash cows in radio today. They make more money than all community radio stations probably put together. So they're doing really, really well, those guys. They have probably a bigger audience than some commercial radio stations, which is why Classic FM gave up their frequency to them. So because the presenters on that station still have the talent, they still have the know-how. They are far better refined now. They sound cooler now. They sound great. And they have an audience that likes them. The audience that grew up with them when they were on 5FM, Radio Metro, and all of that. We should be worried as commercial radio stations that there's a station like that with a community license because they sound amazing. I'll tell you that much.
I can imagine.
That's really what it is. It's the ability to continue to reinvent yourself as a radio format. To a point where you still have an audience. I think there's a lot of great audiences in South Africa. You can easily have a gospel radio station in South Africa and it'll have a huge audience because there are people who love listening to gospel all the time. You see, that's really where we are.
Yeah,
there's an idea for you, Gospel FM.
No, well, maybe 10, 15 years from now, but for now, I'm still enjoying what I'm doing right now. David, this interview lived up to expectation, and we spoke about things that I'd prepared and more, and I digressed and came back. It was all for good reason. And I hope Aboba Bebe Bugelele video will definitely take something out. Not just one, but there's so much knowledge and so much wisdom that came from this interview. All the best, man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Sorry for delaying. We could have done this 3 weeks ago. So, and there are reasons why it happened today. So sorry.
I guess so. I guess so. No, you're forgiven. In fact, you were forgiven long before we started recording, as I did say to you. David, all of the best, man, and thanks for your time, And
anytime.
Let's keep on rocking on the radio.
Enjoy your show. I'll keep listening.
Go, man.